Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome here to the Junction in Dungannon. For those of you who don't know, this is actually a beneficiary of peace funding. And we're delighted to be here today to start this 1.3 Building Positive Relations workshop. We will be recording this today, so welcome to everybody online and welcome to those who are watching retrospectively. You will have the opportunity to ask questions as we go throughout the day. There should be copies of your agenda on the table. There's also a Wi-Fi code on the table. There's also a draft of the concept note on the table. It's great to see so many known faces. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Boylan. I'm one of the program managers with SEUPB. We're delighted to get this workshop off the ground and running. We're keen that the program's up and launched, and Declan will talk to you more about the timeline and so forth there. We're also delighted to have our colleagues Tohill and Rosie Smyth from the departments in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and we have Eimear Murphy with us, Eimear Bush with us today, and she'll be supporting the concept note process and taking you through that a bit later on in the agenda today. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand over to Declan to start the proceedings today.
Thanks very much, Paul. And just to echo what Paul was saying, you're all very welcome here today. This is a really exciting time for us in SEUPB because we're finally really getting things up and running in terms of going out and speaking to the potential projects that will be coming in under the PEACEPLUS programme. So really good opportunity today to hear from us, but for us to hear from you as well in terms of some of the ideas that you have in relation to applications and project development. So just to introduce myself, as Paul said, my name is Declan McGarrigle. I'm the Interim Director of the PEACEPLUS programme at SEUPB. In terms of today, just to give you a broad sort of outline of proceedings and what we'll cover this morning, and it really covers four broad areas. So first of all, I'll talk you through some of the context and some of the context in relation to how we've developed the programme over the last number of years. And also how and where this particular investment area around 1.3 and the regional projects fits within the overall programme. Eimear Bush, as Paul said, will be working to support us over the next number of months. Eimear will be a face that you'll get to know very well, I think, in the weeks and months ahead around the concept note process. So really moving beyond today, what we want to see is the pipeline of projects that are potentially out there around this investment area, and for you to come forward with those short 2-3 pages concept notes that will give us some further information on the projects and also allow Eimear to provide you with some further advice and guidance. And of course, all of that's leading towards a position when we're ready to formally open the programme, and we hope to be able to do that later this year, but that is dependent on some other matters at a government level, and for us to be given the authority to do that, so we'll keep you updated on that. And of course, the launch of the call as well around 1.3. So we'll cover off all of that, and Eimear will go through the concept note process and the pre-application support more generally. And we'll also then provide plenty of time at the end of today's session for questions and answers. So please do, as we work through our presentations, make notes and store up those questions, and we'll make sure that there'll be time at the end for us to respond to you on that. So just to take you through how the programme was developed and some contextual information on that, and how we've reached the point where we're out now really engaged in this sort of workshop this morning. We've reached this point really through a lot of engagement, a lot of detailed collaboration with a range of stakeholders, including the Northern Ireland Executive, the Irish Government, the UK Government, and of course the European Commission. We've drafted a programme that we believe and will lead to a more peaceful, prosperous and stable society through the projects that are funded and the engagement in projects through people in this room and elsewhere. So it's an exciting programme which builds on the legacy of all of the previous peace programmes and also the Interreg programmes as well. And of course, as you know, we have one single programme for this programme period called PEACEPLUS. We no longer have two separate programmes, so it is very much about activities and projects which engage in promoting peace and reconciliation, but also contributing to that wider cross-border economic and territorial development. So again, I noted there just around the process of collaboration and engagement with a range of key stakeholders. So there really was that intensive review, research and public engagement really starting back in 2018 when we first started the reach out and complete some research and start to engage with some key stakeholders. So we did have our, if you remember, our stakeholder engagement process in 2019 and the start of 2020. We had, I think, around 16 events. We had a roadshow around Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. There was a lot of information gathered through that process, through those public events and through engagement, you know, particularly with the likes of young people, but also rural and communities right across our programme area. We had survey submissions, and I think we had around 400, over 400 of those that came through in that initial process. We then had a public consultation in 2021, which concluded, and that consultation was a statutory consultation on the programme that we had designed following all of that intensive research and engagement. So that statutory consultation was successful, and we then presented the programme to the two governments for approval, North and South, and that was done at the end of 2021. And I'm pleased to say that the Commission were the final step, and they approved and adopted the programme in July of this year. As I said, there's some further steps that we're engaging in at the moment before we're in a position to formally launch the programme and indeed formally begin to launch the calls. But this process of engagement goes beyond really anything that we've done before in terms of reaching out at this stage to provide you with as much information as we possibly can and to allow you then to feed in and engage in that concept note process and get some further advice and feedback. I should say as well that we've had a lot of engagement with the two governments in terms of bilaterals over the last number of years. It's obviously important that the programme fits at a policy and a strategic level, both within Northern Ireland, within Ireland, and also at the European level in terms of their policy and regulatory framework. So all of that really has come together in terms of being in the position that we're at now. And you'll hear some further information from Anne and Rosie shortly in terms of the expectations around policy and strategic fit in terms of the projects that you will be developing over the course of the next number of months. So the programme is a hugely significant financial allocation, commitment from the European Union and the governments. So we have a programme value which is in excess of €1 billion in terms of the total value and the total cost of the programme. Projects will continue to be funded up to 100%. So all costs in terms of the total cost of the project that you're developing and working on will be covered by the programme. The programme area continues to be the core programme area is Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. You see the last point that there is, and we are encouraging where possible and where feasible and where it makes sense, participation from partners from outside the programme area. So whether that's further south in Ireland or across the water in terms of Scotland and other regions of the UK. So that's something to consider, is are there partners that can add value to your partnership, can bring expertise, and can obviously contribute to the overall outcomes of what you're trying to achieve. There's 6 themes and 22 investment areas for the programme, so it's a huge, broad range of potential areas that you can focus on. And obviously you're here today to hear more about investment area 1.3. But please do look at the programme summary document on our website and look at those other areas that will be of interest potentially to your organisation as well. And this schematic just shows really where things fit together, and you can see from the slide the 6 thematic areas. So we have theme 1, building peaceful and thriving communities, and that's where 1.3, building positive relations, regional projects sits. You also have theme 2, which is about delivering economic regeneration and transformation. Theme 3, which is a big focus on our children and young people and maintaining those excellent projects and impacts that we've seen under Piece 4. So areas in there around shared learning, shared education, around developing our children and young people in terms of their skills, and also around mental health. And again, a lot of those areas really emerged from that research that we did, and also obviously with the engagement with yourselves and citizens and organisations during the statutory consultation, and also looking back to the stakeholder engagement processes. We also have theme 4, where there's a bit of rural focus. There's also a focus on cross-border health and social care projects, and maintaining again that focus as well on victims and survivors. And then theme 5, we have supporting a sustainable future. There's a cross-border rail transport project that will be funded. We also have other areas around energy, biodiversity, coastal management, and also water quality and water infrastructure. And finally, we have theme 6, which is building and embedding partnership and collaboration. And this is a new area for the programme, and again, I think will be of interest. So we have an investment area there around strategic planning and engagement. So looking at some of the challenges that may exist if you're working on a cross-border basis, and how those challenges can be tackled through projects that are funded under PEACEPLUS. So looking at some of those obstacles that exist, in particular in our border regions and border counties. I should also say as well, one of the big flagship elements of the PEACEPLUS programme is the 40 million euros that's going to small-scale projects. So these are small grants below 100,000 euros, and we have 2 areas where we're funding those projects, and that will be delivered through our partners in Tohill, who will be partnering with a Northern Ireland partner to deliver those small grants initiatives or small-scale project initiatives. So there's 40 million euros there for projects up to 100,000, which will be delivered through simplified processes in terms of the application, the assessment, and also the implementation of those projects as well. So again, another area I would strongly encourage you to keep engaged in, and we hope that some of that will start to be implemented into 2023. So just to finish just this part, the opening remarks in terms of the programme, just to state, just again around theme 1. And theme 1 has really been at the forefront of peace programmes really since their inception. So it focuses on those relationships between communities, both at a local and a regional level. And obviously we're looking at those regional level initiatives today. And it's about practical cross-community, but also where possible cross-border contact. And that's really been fundamental to these programmes since their inception. And again, this is just to show a slide just of where 1.3 fits in. And hopefully you'll start to hear a lot more in the coming months around investment area 1.1, which is the co-designed local community action plans. And a lot of local authorities have now set up their governance arrangements for those in terms of their peace partnerships. And there will be a process now of co-design with communities for those local level projects and initiatives within each council area, all 17 across Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. As I said, 1.2, the investment area is about empowering communities, and that's where some of those small grant and small scale project initiatives are. And of course 1.4 as well, with shared space initiatives, re-imaging communities. And we had a workshop, I think, back in July for that. And there's a concept note process which has been ongoing there, and some support, and hopefully some of you have been engaged in that as well. So there will be calls coming for all of these areas in the very near future. But it's the focus today is on 1.3 and building positive relations, and Eimear will take you through some of that shortly. So at this point, I'm just going to pass over now and welcome our colleagues from the Executive Office and the Department of Rural and Community Development, who are going to provide you with some insight into some of those strategies and policies that really you will need to consider when you're developing your projects in the months ahead, and when you're engaging with Eimear as well in terms of the concept note process. So I'm just going to welcome Anne Tohill from the Executive Office, and Anne will take you through a presentation from her department's perspective. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much. It's good to be here. As Declan said, there's been a lot of work to get the PEACEPLUS programme to this stage. I know some of you will have heard my presentation last week, so bear with me, you're going to hear it again. There's a lot of information here. I have a 10-minute time limit. I can't do it in 10 minutes, but I will be racing through it, and the presentation will be available after. So I'm head of Good Relations Delivery Team in the Executive Office, so I have responsibility for oversight of some of our key Good Relations funding programmes, including the Central Good Relations Fund, which some of you may be beneficiaries of at present or in the past. So TEO, the Executive Office, what it's about, our overall aim is to create a place where all people thrive, create well-being for all. We do that by coordinating a lot of the cross-departmental strategies to create a tolerant, peaceful, inclusive society. We have a wide range of responsibilities, and within that, I think you could characterise it by building relations within and across communities, both north, south, east, west, and internationally. And if you look at some of those areas, you can see very clearly that focus on promoting equality of opportunity and good relations. Where does our role in terms of the peace programmes fit? We're the accountable department for elements of Peace 4, building positive relations, local authority action plans, and victims and survivors. So that means we oversee the delivery of those projects and also the financial allocations and spend. So we engage very closely with Declan and the team in SEUPB. There isn't, I think, a day almost that goes past that we're not in touch with them. The Building Positive Relations strand in PEACEPLUS, as you know, it's not about locally focused projects. It transcends local boundaries. It's projects that make a difference at a regional level that will really change the whole landscape in terms of peace and reconciliation. And there's a very strong cross-border focus in that where that's appropriate. There are also, within that, it's support for projects which tackle some of the most challenging and complex issues that we face. And there is a focus within it on dealing with people from different communities, cultural, ethnic, and political backgrounds. I think that's really important to highlight that focus. So I think it's a stronger and wider focus than the previous peace programmes, which reflects the changes to society here over that time. I've listed there some of the types of areas or projects that can be supported within that. I just want to highlight that there is that focus on capacity building, building positive relations, increase in participation, and on cultural expression, and on projects that will contribute to that. The reason that I highlight that is really so you appreciate the relevance of some of the strategies that I want to mention. But in particular, I think, that focus on the underrepresented groups, women, those with a disability, the LGBTQI community, victims and survivors, former prisoners and members of security forces, ethnic minorities, migrants, asylum seekers, and members of the travellers community. So given the breadth of the programme, there's a wide range of strategies that are relevant. I'm not going to talk to you about all of them. I want to highlight some that are particularly important, or some that are currently in a draft stage or new areas for the Executive Office. So New Decade, New Approach set out very clearly that peace and reconciliation, building a united community was absolutely at the heart of what the executive wanted to see. They committed within that to developing a programme for government. We don't have a programme for government at present, but ministers had approved an outcomes framework which set out the broad outcomes for society as a whole that they wanted to achieve. There are 9 of those. We contribute to all 9. Your projects will contribute to many of those. But in particular, there are 2 that for the peace programme, for the good relations side, are particularly relevant. And that is, if you look at the equal sign, this is about creating an equal society. And then almost opposite that, you see the handshake sign, which is about creating a safe society. And those areas that TEO is responsible for, you can see fit very clearly within those 2 outcomes. The main strategy for building a peaceful society here is the Together Building a United Community strategy. It's been around since 2013. There is no end date for the strategy, but it is currently under review. And that sets out the executive's vision for a peaceful, tolerant, inclusive society where diversity and equality of opportunity is promoted and cultural expression celebrated. 4 broad areas of it. Anybody who's applied for funding under TBUC will have had to demonstrate how they're contributing to one of these 4 areas. So it's our children and young people, our shared community, our safe community, our cultural expression. As I said, the strategy is currently under review. There's been a lot of engagement with the voluntary community sector, local government, and more generally to get views about what a new strategy should look like. When ministers are in post, the intention is that the draft strategy will be put to ministers for consideration prior to a period of public consultation. So for now, it's the TBUC strategy, if you want to consider that in terms of your application. But we're also responsible for other areas that are directly relevant to the PEACEPLUS programme, given its wide focus. The racial equality strategy, again, that's been around since 2015. There was a stock take last autumn. There are 7 broad aims of that, and they are the things that you would expect to see in terms of promoting good relations between people from different backgrounds, tackling racism, ensuring equal access to services, participation, and cultural expression. Northern Ireland has changed a lot over the last 10, 15 years, and in particular, over the last few years, we've seen a significant increase in flows of refugees and asylum seekers. So we have 1,800 Syrian refugees resettled in the last 2 or 3 years. 1,500 Ukrainian nationals since March have been welcomed here, and we're preparing for another 890 Afghan refugees. So, within the proposals that are coming forward, we are very hopeful, and we've put this message out to the councils as well, to see proposals that will help address the issues that refugees, asylum seekers, and our minority ethnic communities face here. We want to make sure that they feel truly welcomed, valued and respected, and part of society. So we're hopeful that we'll see a strong focus on that in the proposals coming forward. I do have to say we'll be assessing the applications just at this point. So in relation to the draft refugee integration strategy, there is work underway on that. There was a consultation earlier in the year. The vision for that sets out, if you look at the words in the vision statement there, this is all about being valued and respected, safe and secure, being able to exercise their rights and responsibilities, and supported to achieve their full potential. And that's just to give you some idea of the sorts of things that we, based on the engagement that's happened so far, that are coming out as being really important to minority ethnic communities, refugees and asylum seekers. So again, any applications should take cognizance of that. A fairly new area for the Executive Office is the responsibility for the development of a strategy and an action plan on ending violence against women and girls. And I know people will wonder what is the relevance to a peace and reconciliation programme, but this goes back to the focus on underrepresented groups. We know that women and girls who are subject to violence, can be under coercive control, can be the furthest away from society, very difficult to engage. So how do you build that into a PEACEPLUS programme? some of the suggestions we have, but again, it's for yourselves, and please do speak to the organisations that have responsibility on the ground, or the charities that are working with victims of violence. So some of the things that we would suggest there are, for example, bystander training. We had a conference in June around that. The details are on the Executive Office website. Encouraging including violence against women as part of any ending violence programme or project that you wish to apply for. And there's some other suggestions there, but they're by no means all, so it's just to give a sort of sense of where that fits within the programme. The strategy, there is no strategy at present. Work's underway on a co-design basis on that, but some of the, practical, obvious things, and again, speak to the organisations that are in the lead in this, if you are planning and putting forward a proposal around that. We have a victims and survivors strategy which covered a 10-year period up to 2019. It's been extended to April of next year, and work is underway on a new strategy. There is, as you know, within the PEACE programme, a dedicated strand that deals with victims and survivors, but that doesn't exclude any opportunities across other strands for projects that will help support the needs of victims and survivors. So there's a lot's been done. We've had the establishment of the Commission on Victims and Survivors and the Victims and Survivor Support Service. If you are planning and submitting an application around that, and we've had some great ones under Peace 4, do speak to those organisations just to make sure it's complementary and isn't going to duplicate anything that's been done elsewhere. I wanted to highlight also the executive programme on paramilitarism and organised crime. This is one that isn't led by the Executive Office but by the Department of Justice, but we contribute to it as well, as do a number of departments. And I think really, if you look at peace and reconciliation here, tackling this area is probably one of the most important things that we need to do, and one of the most challenging. So proposals that work with ex-paramilitaries, work with communities, young people, to try and get them away from that type of coercive control that we hear about frequently. Again, we'd really welcome that. Children and young people strategy, it's a 10-year strategy. I'm going to rattle through these slides now because I'm conscious I'm taking up a lot of time here. But there are a number of wellbeing outcomes. I've highlighted 3 of those there that have a particular relevance to this programme. So I'm not going to read those through, but again, that cuts across almost every strand of PEACEPLUS. I've highlighted shared education policy. The reason being is that the mainstream and shared education strategy was launched last week, and it highlights how important it is to put shared education at the heart of all communities. And that is not to say there's not a role for integrated education. I do want to say that, but it's just because this strategy has just been launched, and anything that's fairly new that you might not be aware of, I just want to highlight those at the minute. There is a long-standing community relations, equality and diversity in education policy, which again is about working with young people in the formal and non-formal sectors to build good relations. I can see we have people here today representing some of the sports organisations, so I'm sure they'll be delighted to see the reference to the Active Living Sport and Physical Activity Strategy that was launched in May. Again, we all know what a great way of building relations it is if you can bring people together to engage in sport. We also know how divisive that can be, so again, projects that use sport as a medium would be welcomed, and within that there's a number of outcomes that are very clearly linked to the PEACE programme. Finally, I just want to mention very quickly the economic vision. As you know, the PEACEPLUS programme brings together the 3 pillars of sustainable development: economic, societal, environmental. It's not always easy, I think, in the good relations space to see the obvious link with environmental or economic goals, but we've seen many projects that do that over the years, often focusing on building skills, for example, not just young people, women, older people, building those skills and helping to get people, on the pathway to peace. So the economic vision is big focus on innovation. If you have innovative proposals around skills development, again, and you can show the good relations and peace building outcome from that, again, that's welcomed. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anne. And I think it is important just to go through that and provide that information because, as I said at the start and at the outset, it is these strategies and policies both governments have you need to consider in terms of that developmental process for your project. So thanks very much for that, Anne. I'm going to invite Rosie Smyth from the Department of Rural and Community Development up now, and she'll give an overview from the Irish Government point of view. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Declan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosie Smyth, and I work in the Department of Rural and Community Development in Ireland. And it's great to be able to hold these events in person again. So the Department of Rural and Community Development was founded in July 2017 and is led by Minister Heather Humphreys, who is assisted by Minister Joe O'Brien. The Department of Rural and Community Development's mission is to promote rural and community development and to support vibrant, inclusive and sustainable communities throughout Ireland. Our vision is a sustainable society with individual and community well-being at its heart, supporting thriving rural communities and where all communities, urban and rural, have opportunities to grow together and develop economically, socially and culturally. A key objective of all the programmes under our department's remit is that they are targeted at those sectors and areas most in need, while also acknowledging the ongoing and future economic and social challenges we face as a result of a number of contributing factors. Our department's engagement on peace is that we are an accountable department and match funder for a number of thematic areas under the Peace 4 programme, including the Building Positive Relations theme. The objective of this investment area is to promote positive relations characterised by respect, where cultural diversity is celebrated and people can live, learn and socialise together, free from prejudice, hate and intolerance. This investment area has a significant reach and places particular emphasis on providing support to those most marginalised within our communities, including women, older people, minority communities, migrants, refugees and members of the traveller community, those living with disabilities, those with issues arising from the legacy of the conflict, including ex-prisoners and security service personnel, and those from the LGBTI community. This is not an exhaustive list and will include engagement with individuals and communities who have not yet participated in peace-building activities and newcomer communities. Projects should be inclusive in nature and facilitate significant and sustained contact between those from different community, cultural and political backgrounds, allowing for collaboration across a broad range of areas of mutual interest, and should involve cross-border dimensions where possible and appropriate to the intervention. Many of you here today have played a leading role in the delivery of peace programmes over the years and have a good success in designing, development and implementation of previous Building Positive Relation programmes and interventions, all of which have had a significant impact on all involved through your ongoing dedication to promoting and building relationships, celebrating cultural diversity, addressing issues of trust, prejudice and intolerance, and promoting peace and reconciliation under the various iterations of the peace programmes. And similar to the Peace 4 projects, you will need to ensure that the new programmes and interventions are aligned with the relevant government and EU strategies and policies as we look ahead to what we can achieve over the lifetime of the new PEACEPLUS programme. Under the new decade, new approach, the Irish Government is committed to working with the Northern Ireland Executive through the North-South Ministerial Council to help deliver projects that will benefit people across the island of Ireland, north, south, east and west, including projects relating to reconciliation and culture. We are committed to ensuring that the PEACEPLUS programme, which will build on and continue the work of both Peace and Interreg, will continue to support reconciliation and harnessing the opportunities of peace for all. In developing the International Fund for Ireland strategy, Connecting Communities up to 2024, an extensive evaluation of the three core programmes, the Peace Walls, Peace Impact and Personal Youth Development was carried out. While each of these programmes are delivering excellent results in changing attitudes, creating alternatives to conflict and offering new skills to young people at risk of paramilitary recruitment, the evaluation also highlighted the extent of work that is still to be done. In my next few slides, I will outline a number of key documents from an Irish government perspective. Under the Programme for Government, we have committed to working with our EU partners and UK Government to secure necessary funding for the EU PEACEPLUS programme, to contribute to peace-building initiatives, and to working with all communities and traditions on the island to build consensus around a shared future. Project Ireland 2040 prioritises the well-being of all our people, wherever they live and whatever their background. Well-being, equality and opportunity represent the core independent themes of Project Ireland 2040. Without equality, we cannot have well-being, and without opportunity, we cannot have equality. Our rural future, the rural development policy up to 2025, focuses on social cohesion and inclusion, and outlines that the population of rural Ireland is increasingly diverse. Its population encompasses diversity of age, family type, nationality, ethnicity, religious belief, ability, gender identity, and sexual orientation. It is important to capitalise on this diversity and to ensure that our society is cohesive, engaged, and that the well-being of everyone is catered for in an inclusive and complementary way. The Roadmap for Social Inclusion up to 2025 sets out goals to measure progress across aspects of social inclusion, including social integration and empowering communities to address social exclusion, with the overall objective of achieving a better quality of life for all. The Healthy Ireland Strategic Action Plan up to 2025 is a national framework for improved health. It focuses on lifelong well-being and emphasises the need to empower people and communities to better look after their own health and well-being. In order to create a vibrant, sustainable and inclusive society, communities need to be empowered to develop and sustain their own well-being. The government commits itself to promoting community participation with a strong system of local government and creating robust local collaboration structures by engaging with local communities. A key objective of our department is to facilitate the growth of grassroots, community-led development and greater participation and engagement by all communities in the local decision-making processes. And in August 2019, the department launched the Sustainable, Inclusive and Empowered Communities, a 5-year strategy to support the community and voluntary sector in Ireland up to 2024, which supports partnership and collaborative effort at all levels and between all stakeholders, comprising high-level objectives and associated actions to support communities, their representative organisations and community and voluntary sector. Our department is delighted to see that the new PEACEPLUS programme includes a strong community-led focus on each of the thematic areas. There are a number of other strategies that should also be considered during this process, and while these strategies are dated up to 2020 and 2021, the Programme for Government has committed to an evaluation of the processes for implementation of the National Strategy for Women and Girls, the Migrant Integration Strategy and the National Traveller and Roma Inclusion Strategy, and so they are still relevant and should be considered as part of the project development process. The National Traveller and Roma Inclusion Strategy, otherwise known as NETRIS, provides a framework for action on Traveller and Roma issues and represents a whole-of-government approach, bringing together government departments and agencies with representatives of Traveller and Roma communities to focus on key issues including cultural identity, gender equality, anti-discrimination and equality. The National LGBTI Inclusion Strategy's mission is to promote inclusion, protect the rights and to improve quality of life and well-being for the LGBTI people, enabling them to fully participate in Ireland's social, economic, cultural and political life, following core principles including equality, respect for diversity, accessibility, inclusion and visibility. And finally, the National Strategy for Women and Girls. It sets out a series of actions to promote women's equality and seeks to make women more visible so that their voice can be heard on issues of concern for them. The aim is to enable women to be equal and active citizens within society. It puts a focus on promoting women's leadership in politics, business, sport and in local communities. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, Rosie. I should also have said earlier that, because I know a lot of you are busy taking notes as we're working through, hopefully some of those are questions for us later on. But the presentations will be made available on our website after today's event. And there's also a recording that will go on our website as well, so that'll maybe just help in terms of some of the information that's coming at you today. Rosie and Anne will be about for the question and answer session as well, so again, if there's any questions, please store them up for the end of today's session. So at this point, I'm going to welcome Eimear Bush, and as I said earlier, Eimear will be working with yourselves around providing support and reviewing concept notes in the weeks and months ahead before the formal opening of the call. So Eimear will take you through a little bit more detail in terms of the investment area 1.3, which obviously you're all interested in here today to hear about. She'll also take you through some of that pre-application support and also set out some of the timescales and some further information on the concept note and some of the requirements of that. And the concept note, I think, is available on our website at the moment. So you can go online and get that concept note from today onwards. So over to Eimear. I'll pass over now. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm pleased to be back doing some work with SEUPB, and particularly with this investment area. It's really interesting and it's exciting. And I think today is good news in a sea of otherwise not very good news. This is a period of pre-application support that will hopefully take some of the pain out of planning your application for this area. If you see things repeated in these slides that you've heard before this morning, it means they're important. And I thank Anne and Rosie for putting what I'm going to say in context, and I'll certainly be printing out both of the presentations that you've made today to refer and guide you all. So I'll refer to them again, but those were really key slides and important messages. Building positive relations. What's it all about? Quite simply, promoting positive relations that are characterized by respect, where cultural diversity is celebrated and people can live, learn, and socialize together, free from prejudice, hate, and intolerance. Lovely words, hard stuff, hard to achieve. Many of you have done it before. We're asking you to do more, go a bit further, build on what you've done. If you're new, think about what you can do to contribute to this. This is a really exciting project, a programme, the PEACEPLUS programme. It's an acknowledgement of how far Northern Ireland and the border region has come, but it also is an acknowledgement that we're not there yet, and that the organisations that are here today and those who will listen to this afterwards have a key role to play in building peace and prosperity for the region. So what does this investment area seek to achieve? It seeks to support projects which transcend local boundaries. There will be some local authorities here today who will be building positive relations at a sub-regional level, doing small local projects. These are bigger regional projects, bigger amounts of funding, and perhaps one could say more ambitious in their reach. And I'm not by any means denigrating what the smaller projects are doing at the sub-regional level, but there's a broader reach here. They may be happening, or they will be happening, at thematic area. The projects under the how should involve cross-border dimensions where possible, as appropriate to the intervention. This investment area has a good measure of flexibility in it, within the parameters of what's on that slide. As long as you can achieve a significant contribution to peace and reconciliation across the region, we want to be flexible in terms of how you do that. So my role in working with you in building these concept notes is bouncing about ideas and seeing how you can best do it. So we're not going to be prescriptive. It was incredibly useful, I found. Anne gave us some examples of what projects might look like. I won't go into too many examples today because I want you to tell us what your project will look like when it comes to the concept note. The who, you've heard this, you've seen this list before, and both accountable departments talked about women and strategies around violence against women and girls, strategies that address the underrepresentation of women in leadership in business. Older people, similarly, that might be one of the thematic groups on whom you focus. Minority, new communities, those with a disability, those with issues arising from the legacy of the conflict, so ex-prisoners, for example, and security service personnel, members of the travelling community, and those from the LGBT community. Of course, foremost in the news at the minute are the cost of living increase that's affecting everybody. But it will, of course, if there will be some who will be more adversely affected than others. So think about those who are currently left behind economically, and the growing numbers who are left behind economically, and how PEACEPLUS, because it's about building peace and prosperity, the two go hand in hand, how PEACEPLUS can help those left behind economically as well. The scope and range, as I said earlier, we want to show flexibility within the parameters of what the PEACEPLUS programme and this investment area is trying to achieve. But some examples of the types, the thematic range and types of projects you might be working with are community development, parenting, arts and culture, sport, education, social innovation, enterprise. Just as that earlier slide that gave you the target groups was a non-exhaustive list, this is simply a taster. And you can go beyond this. And the concept note is there for you to explore, to tell me what other groups and ideas you will have. Meaningful and purposeful contact. You'll hear that a lot in terms of the Peace Programme, PEACEPLUS, and under this investment area. What we're trying to achieve in building positive relations is projects that are inclusive in nature and facilitate significant, meaningful, and purposeful contact between those of different cultural, ethnic, and political backgrounds. It's tough work that you're going to be embarking on, and you're the experts on it. We're not going to tell you that what meaningful and purposeful looks like for your project, because you will know if you're working with women what level of meaningful and purposeful engagement is, or young people, or sporting activities, or arts and music. So talk to me again about that in the concept note, and let's assess what is appropriate. Whatever it is, it should lead to attitudinal change for those people with whom you're working, and you should seek to measure that. You must seek to measure that. So initiatives should evidence a commitment to tackling challenging and complex issues, including sectarianism, which, let's face it, is a key driver in limiting peace and reconciliation progress. I've just touched there on measuring change, and it's very hard, and we all have, anecdotal evidence of how change comes about, but we're pushing projects this time around to seek to measure it. Your project must result in an increase of the programme area population, which has relationships with, and more than that, a greater understanding of those from different cultural backgrounds, and that those people who've participated in your project, as a result, feel part of a wider and more diverse community. So meaningful and purposeful contact should be worthwhile. It should have a function. It should result in participation and shared activities. It needs to have a legacy. It needs to leave behind cohorts of communities and people who behave differently, act differently, work together in a more positive way. SEUPB will produce tools and questions, and these will be provided to you. We're working in a way that you can measure participant attitudinal change, but we're also asking you at the time of application, according to your project and what your project looks like, to tell us how you're going to measure the attitudinal change for your project cohorts. A regional approach. I did quite a lot of planning before today and spoke to some organisations who had received funding under the previous programme. And they said, well, what's different? Well, a regional approach, what's different to the local peace action plans? This is regional, as we say, and is characterised by larger projects. There is 35 million available under this investment area. We anticipate that the lower end of the projects awarded will be maybe around €500,000, no less than that, and perhaps up to €2 or €3 billion. Again, I don't want to be prescriptive about your needs until you cost and build a programme of activities over a 4-year period, but we're looking at that ballpark on a regional basis. It should address strategic and policy issues of relevance in the region, and the two presentations before me very capably and pointedly gave you the strategic and policy issues of the region, so please go back to those. Your project should not be one that is engaged in widespread service delivery at local level. It's not what you're doing anyway. It's not what your core funding is there to do, and everyone, I understand, is under crisis with core funding cuts. But PEACEPLUS is additional. It's an additional programme, and we want you to go beyond what your core offering is. I've also been asked, can we extend what we did before? Well, let's talk about that. Let's see what the requirements of a changing society are, and let's see what you did before. Was it evaluated? What were the findings of that evaluation? How can you build on it? How can you make it more relevant? How can you really focus in on the requirements of the new call for building positive relations? These indicators on the slide, this is an important slide, these are indicators at an investment area level. So all of the funded projects, I don't know how many we'll fund, let's say there's 20 to 30 projects in the mix. Collectively, you must achieve these indicators. The output indicator is that 116 organisations will jointly be engaged in regional level projects. That 116 is the lead partner, its project partners, and any other meaningful, significant collaboration with organisations. It's not the number of applications funded, it's those projects funded, it's those project lead partners and partners. The result indicator, again, that's an aggregate number for all of the projects funded, should result at the end of all of your projects in 58,000 people from different communities engaged jointly in regional level projects. And you'll be asked at a project level, in your concept note, and if you move forward to the application, to tell us what your output indicator is for your project and what your result indicator is for your project. And for your result indicator, for those number of people from different communications and engaged jointly, meaningful and purposeful, I will go back to that. You're not just counting someone who's come in the door to have a chat, a lunch, and you know, I want you to tell me and describe the depth and the change and the attitudinal change that will result in that person and then we'll build up to the 58,000 from there. So there must be effective means built in to monitor attendance and to evaluate the positive peace impact on the participants. I've got 2 pages of indicative actions, and these are important. They're not project ideas, but they're what should be embedded within your project, at least 1, maybe 2, maybe more of these actions. And what comes out of these actions are capacity building, building positive relations, increasing participation, cultural expression, and making a lasting contribution to peace and reconciliation. I hate the term buzzwords because behind it, it seems to mean that they're empty expressions, and I don't mean any of these to be empty expressions. They should be real and meaningful. We want projects to build capacity on cross-community, through the programme area, on a cross-community and/or cross-border collaborative basis. Secondly, we want projects which develop new community leaders and enhance the capacity of existing community leaders and volunteers to promote and facilitate peace and reconciliation. And I know there's community leaders in the room now, and I do lay my hat down to many community leaders in the last 25 years who have got us to where we're at. Support for conflict resolution interventions. They might look like anti-sectarian, pro-cultural understanding initiatives, anything that contributes towards building positive relations. The fourth bullet point is about improving and sustaining relationships by addressing issues of trust, prejudice, and intolerance. I was at an interesting conference last week where they talked about difficult conversations and how it's not useful to have difficult conversations when people aren't ready to have them. But you'll be the experts in getting people to a stage where they're ready to have those conversations to address issues of trust, prejudice, and interventions. And only then can we begin to move forward. Projects which showcase the benefits of a new approach. For a number of years now, Northern Ireland has been a case study, and we've gone out into the rest of the world to tell them what's going on here. But equally, you may look to beyond and bring new ideas back. We're open to that. More indicative actions, building the capacity of organisations in the region, engaging those with opposing and dissenting views, and what I said earlier obviously stands. That's when people are ready to have those conversations. Projects which increase civic participation, particularly for those target groups that were in an earlier slide, the one with women, older people, disabled people. You'll go back to that slide. Projects which increase minority and women's participation in public, social, cultural, and political life. And as I said, both of the speakers before me spoke about that. Projects which facilitate positive cultural expression within diverse communities. PEACEPLUS, it's a whole 7 more years since the previous programme, and the demographics of the region have changed. Just driving here today and coming through Cookstown, and there's children going to school from all sorts of backgrounds and communities and all colour of skin. And I don't think I would have that would have been so prevalent at the start of the last programme. So we must broaden this, make it even more inclusive. And projects which work towards sensitive and inclusive cultural expression and celebration. Let's face it, there will be a lot of fun to be had in delivering some of these projects amongst the blood, sweat and tears. But, sharing and learning and peace building can be fun as well and can be full of laughter, I hope. Community participation, I mentioned there that the demographics of the region are changing. It is fundamentally a peace programme. It is fundamentally here because we are addressing the legacy of the troubles of the conflict, and there's still a road to be travelled. So we do want and need you to look at your community participation. This, in Northern Ireland, should primarily be on a 60-40 split based on the 2 traditional communities. Participation in Ireland and the border region, an 80-20 split. Obviously, as I just said, participation by minority ethnic communities and those of different racial backgrounds, new communities, is expected, absolutely needs to be there. And we understand that that will affect the splits. We'll work with you on it. I'll talk to you about it as you build your concept note. So let me get on to what we're going to be doing together in the next 8 weeks, and then in the weeks after you've submitted the concept note, because from today, you're going to have 8 weeks to complete a 3-page concept note. I think Declan said earlier that it was 3 pages. By the time you complete it, I will warn you, it will be a lot longer than that. But it will be all for the good, because should you go on ahead to complete a full application, that will be the foundations of your project dug, so to speak. So what's today about? Today is an opportunity to get support in advance of the call. It's an opportunity to share ideas with potential partners, either here and now today after you have lunch, or when you go back to your partnerships, provide feedback, read over the slides again, study the concept note, call me. It's about telling us your idea and receiving feedback before you make a full application, and who wouldn't want to do that? I will be able to give advice on how your outline might be strengthened, if it's a good outline. I will be able to tell you whether or not this is the right investment area for you, and I will be able to tell you early if it's not a good application, if it's not the right area for you, and if you should be signposted elsewhere within the PEACEPLUS programme or out with the PEACEPLUS programme. So the concept note is available to download from the website, and there should be a copy on your table. It covers some, but not all, of the questions that will be in the application proper. We don't want to put you to that pain quite yet. It will help you put in place, as I said, the foundations of your project, so you're better prepared when the call opens. I must stress, it is not a formal application, and it is not scored. So you're completing this on a without prejudice basis to bounce around ideas, but take it seriously. Think about it. Put your best foot forward. So you'll see there that the concept note has got 6 questions. Each are about 300 to 500 words. You can go by all means to the full 500, or you can pull it back a little. It's up to yourself. I am available for advice pre-completion, so if you've got questions as you're doing it, feel free to drop me an email. We've put an 8-week deadline in completing it, but I would be really keen to see concept notes before then, if you have them. And I am aware that some people knew that this was coming up, downloaded a concept note for another thematic area and began to work on it. Great idea if you've done that, but now go and make sure that you can put that across into the proper concept note. And the sooner you get it into me, the sooner we can start collaborating. I would like to avoid a tsunami coming in on the 23rd so that we just don't have back-to-back meetings in the 4 weeks before Christmas, but equally it is the deadline, so you can work towards that. So let me take you through the 6 questions. The first one, about your project. Describe how your project aligns with PEACEPLUS, with the programme, and specifically the objective of investment area 1.3. Are you working with communities of mutual interest? If so, what activities are you focusing on? This is really describing the project. This is the nitty-gritty, selling it. Let's think about the idea. This is the fun question, I think. Does the programme offer meaningful and purposeful contact and learning? How many people are you working with? Why? What difference is it going to make? How are you going to measure that difference? What are you going to do? This is, and how is it going to build better relationships within the population? How is it going to build positive relations? How is it going to address sectarianism? How is it going to build peace? And is there a focus on marginalised communities? Question 2, outputs and results. And you'll remember the outputs was about the number of organisations collaborating, and the figures on that slide were collective for all of the projects. Here I want to know your project. How many organisations will be engaged in your project in a meaningful way? What will your partnership look like? How many? How many are engaged? How many people will be engaged in your project? Over what period? And who are those people? This is hard stuff, and I understand that it's hard stuff, but what we're saying here is within this, you have the flexibility to design a really innovative, interesting, far-reaching, exciting peace-building project. How will you reach those participants? How will you keep them involved? How will you engage them? How will you move them forward? And how will you monitor their participation? How will you count them and make sure they're coming in? But the hard bit, how will you evaluate the difference that this project is making for them? And when I get to the budget bit, in case I don't say it, but I will, we really want to see monitoring and evaluation personnel built in to an application, because it's such a key part of your project, is being able to evaluate the difference that you're making in the project. Cross-community and cross-border, it almost goes without saying, but obviously it is so fundamental to the peace programme. Where are your partners located? What geographical area does the project cover? Many of you will be aiming to have projects that cover the entire region or a large part of the region, that is Northern Ireland and the 6 border counties of Ireland. How will you ensure across that region meaningful participation from all communities, particularly when we're trying to reach marginalised communities, low-income household, people with disabilities, people who don't have access to transport, people in rural areas? How will you reach people? It's hard to get out, it's hard to find the means, it's hard to get people out of their boundaries and cross boundaries at the best of times. But when they are strapped for cash, for time, for childcare, how will you overcome those barriers? Tell us how cross-community and cross-border work will affect meaningful and ongoing change. So why have you picked these particular regions and areas as your place to target and focus on? What's the problem there that you're going to make better? What are the issues that you will ameliorate? And are you making specific efforts to include minority communities? You'll see key themes coming through here in a lot of these slides. Duplication and displacement must be considered for each project. Is your project likely to impact upon and/or complement existing or planned provision? If it's the same as what should be core funded as what's out there, we don't want to fund it. If it complements, that's great, tell us, and look to the strategies that were up there earlier in the presentations today to see about complementarity with government strategies north and south. And how will any issues of complementarity and/or duplication be avoided or mitigated? So have you spoken to the right people when you've built this application? Do you have a good mix of partners, of knowledge around the table to address all of the policy areas and the needs? Talking about the partnership and the people around the table, question 5 addresses the issue of partnership and implementing arrangements. You'll have thought probably already about your project team. You've probably come here today with a few different project ideas at the back of your mind or drafted out in your notebook. You probably will have lifted the phone to a number of partners, some of whom you've worked with before, perhaps some new partners. Take the time now, before you complete your concept note, to think about that partnership team. Do you want to stretch yourself a little bit further? Do you want to do the same old thing, or do you want to extend it and bring in new communities, bring in new organisations, or bring in groups with whom you haven't already worked? So who's in the project team, how many, and who is doing what? In terms of staff, what are their qualifications and experience to deliver on this? Who have you got to do it? What are the practical arrangements to support the smooth project implementation? And in the last programming period, there was a massive bump on the road that intervened on smooth project implementation called COVID. And in the application form, we'll ask you to look at risks to smooth implementation. But if you have time in the concept note, I would think about that as well. Just anticipate what might give you a bump on the road to the smooth project implementation. Or what did you learn the last time about perhaps going online? Were there actually some benefits from it? Most of us hated it, but maybe there were people who were more easily able to access some of the programs because of it, at least in the short term. What are your management arrangements? Try to plot that out, an organisational chart around the management of a project. You'll all have it for your own organisation, but doing an organisational chart for the project is very useful. These are demanding projects. Working in partnership, working within one organisation is hard enough. When you put 2 and 3 and 4 together to work in partnership, it is challenging. But you've done it before. The Peace Programme, throughout the lifetime of the Peace Programmes, has required it, and it has built a body of knowledge out there in the communities of how to work together. And I think in Northern Ireland and the border region we do it well. Have you got all appropriate policies and procedures in place? Of course, think about safeguarding. Many of those target groups that were on the slides earlier are vulnerable people, and you will have to have safeguarding and working with vulnerable adults or children policies in place. I'll say this more than once, it'll come up on another slide. Are you financially secure with sufficient cash flow in place to be reimbursed expenditure in arrears, which is how the payment schedule goes? It causes pain. And think about where you want to stand in a partnership as a lead partner and as a project partner to be able to bear that financial responsibility. Value for money. This is about the budget. And there were some queries sent in advance of today, and one was around, do I need to have much of an idea about my budget for the concept note, or can it be kind of back of an envelope? You'll see when it comes to it that it is a small budget. We don't ask you to break it down in great detail, but I would like it to be fairly accurate. And obviously, if you move on to the full application stage, you will have a lot more opportunity to flesh out the budget at that stage. But we will, I will, even at the stage of concept note, assess to what extent the budget is coherent and proportionate to what it is you're offering. When you move forward to the full application stage, you will be required to give much more of a detailed breakdown. So by the time of application, the financial allocation per budget line must be in line with your work plan, your outputs, what it is you're expected to do. A little to go back on or to expand, I should say, on the lead partner role. It's a huge role. It's a huge responsibility that you're taking on. These projects, as I said earlier, could be anywhere between, and these aren't fixed posts, but let's say they could be anywhere between $500,000 to $3 million. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility that you're taking on behalf of your target groups and the projects that you're delivering and the programs, but also in the staff that you'll be employing. So yours will be the lead partner, that is a coordination role. First and foremost in submitting this concept note. Then if you decide to move forward, if it's deemed to be a strong application, to a full application. And you will assume responsibility for the smooth implementation of the entire project, and you will coordinate all partners and activities. The lead partner shall also be responsible for financial management, ensuring rigorous budget control, that eligible and timely claims are submitted, and that sufficient cash flow is there to maintain the project in the case of ineligible claims. So you're responsible, whoever puts themselves forward as lead partner, for fund allocation to partners. And the lead partner will accept responsibility in the event of ineligibility and/or failure to meet the output and result indicator targets. In terms of reporting, the lead partner will coordinate reports. The lead partner will oversee the monitoring and evaluation and oversee the maintenance of records. The lead partner is responsible for communication and for monitoring and evaluation. And you will have a strong liaison with SEUPB, both to make sure you're in line and in keeping with all of the communications regulations, and to link with SEUPB when the monitoring and evaluation framework is issued later next year. Should there be any training rolled out or any necessary training by SEUPB or within your project team, the lead partner is responsible for making sure everyone's trained up. And also for policies and procedures. I mentioned safeguarding and anything surrounding equality and staff working and financial procedures. In short, it's a heavy role. It's a highly responsible role, and the lead partner accepts overall responsibility for ensuring implementation of the entire project. You will have a partnership agreement in place. You may devolve some of this responsibility to partners, but ultimately, in terms of SEUPB's contract with the lead partner, that's a significant role, and we will devolve responsibilities to the lead partner. Other things to bear in mind. You've got time now to build a strong partnership and being clear on who's doing what. There's also time after this, both for questions, but after that to chat to each other, have a sandwich, exchange phone numbers, business cards, have an idea what each other's doing, and network, please do. And I'm sure many of you know one another. Don't bite off more than you can chew. See what's realistic and achievable. You know all of that. And think about finance. Can you manage those cash flows? I'm hammering that message home hard. Are you able to take on this project of this scale? Going back to PEACEPLUS and what it's all about, fundamentally, you need to have clarity of purpose of what it is you're here for, what it is you're trying to achieve. Always have PEACEPLUS, building positive relations, at the forefront of your mind. And whatever your project is doing, that's the end goal. That's the end goal about bringing communities together, building peace, positive relations, making connections, building trust, having hard conversations, moving this society forward. And the last one is around thinking about how you're going to monitor your targets, and it should also mention there how you're going to evaluate your impact. So, very briefly, as of today, put pen to paper, get onto your laptop, and begin to build your concept note. If you have any questions, drop me a line. If we need to have a chat as you build it, let me know. I would like to get them all in, or I need to have them all in 8 weeks from today, which is the 23rd of November. If you can get yours in sooner, please do. And I will meet with you sooner. And so I will aim to give feedback within 15 working days of receipt of that concept note. If you add 15 working days to the 23rd, we're getting very close to Christmas. So that's another incentive for you to get that in earlier. And I will talk to everybody who sends in a concept note, but additional and further support is likely to depend upon the fit and quality of what's outlined in the concept note. So those that maybe aren't as strong or not in the right place, there will be fewer meetings than those that are likely to go a bit further. In due course, there will be additional documents available to you. At the moment, what we have available is the programme overview. That's about a 55-page document. It's kind of a compressed version of what PEACEPLUS looks like, and that's on the website. Very soon, the full cooperation programme will be available, the programme rules, the guide for applicants, and the call for this investment area. I should say, however, that if you get a copy of all of these presentations, that will give you a really good head start as to what's in the call, and you should, from today, be able to build a really good and strong concept note, I hope. So, thank you.